So good evening and welcome everyone. Tonight to kick off Women's History Month and to close out Black History Month, we have the great pleasure of hearing the words and stylings from the award-winning and critically acclaimed author of About Woman is a Dangerous Thing, Damaris Hill. For those of you who do not know, Damaris is actually a daughter of Stanford. And so it's really exciting to have her sort of come here and speak to us tonight. Damaris is going to be talking about her latest masterpiece, Breath Better Spent. At a time when Black girls across the country are increasingly vulnerable to unjust violence, unwarranted incarceration, and unnoticed disappearance, Damaris chooses to celebrate and protect the girl she carries in her new work. Damaris is the author of numerous books, including About Woman is a Dangerous Thing, which is the book that she spoke about when she was with us last time, The Fluid Boundaries of Suffrage, and Jim Crow Staking Claims in the American Heartland. Damaris is currently the Associate Professor of Creative Writing at the University of Connecticut. Thank you and welcome, Damaris and everyone.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the invitation. I really appreciate, Ms. Joseph, how you jumped right on. I don't even think the book was out yet. You were already emailing me. So thank you. Please order a couple of copies for the Black girls that come to the library still.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we certainly have ordered several copies, but I would recommend each of you to also get your own copy and read it and share it with your friends and family.
Thank you. I'm going to say one more thing about that before I get into the reading. What has been pleasurable about the book is the immediate response I've gotten from readers. And most of the time, like somebody will read the book and they'll be like, I ordered 3 for my friends. Or I read the book and I ordered 2 for my daughters. So that has been great to hear, and a great reception that people are finding a personal connection with the book. So the book is called A Memoir in Verses, Mostly Poetry. I'll read a little bit from the preface, then I'm going to read a little bit of the histories. We're going to talk a little bit. If you have any questions, ask them immediately. I'm here. Then I'll read some of the semi-autobiographical poems, and then we'll go into the last part of the book, which is entitled In Search Of, which talks about not only some of the tribulations of Black girlhood in America, but also goes beyond. Breath better spent, living. At this moment, I am a writer who lives and works a teaching job in Lexington, Kentucky. This is a place that has little love for me and the Black girl self I carry on my shoulders. These feelings have intensified since the murder of Breonna Taylor and the subsequent attempts to smother public outcry regarding her murder, such as the political attacks against Attica Scott that criminalized her professional responsibilities as a legislator. I pause there because Attica Scott, a state representative here, was also shot at while she was attending a community picnic, to let you understand how intense the feelings are here. When I speak of love, I speak of community and a type of nurturing environment that allows my writer self and my Black girl self to live uninhibited. Love and nurturing are essential parts of the human experience. A secure foundation of love and nurturing bears many gifts. Imagination might be the greatest of them. I have named this book Breath Better Spent, Living Black Girlhood. The conceptions of breath are central to this book. Every breath in physical or sacred form, every laugh sounding like a giggle or thunder, every whispered joke or secret, even the courtesy of gossip, every prayer I utter or the prayers uttered for me, every gasp, every praise and squeal were sound investments, good time spent in girlhood. Take it in. Breath is both individual and profoundly communal, particularly in the form of language. Breath is a type of life force, one that is physical and spiritual. So now I'm going to move into some of the histories. And the histories are about literary figures and others throughout American history, starting with the colonial period. So the first poem that I'm going to read is Speaking in Tongues, and it's for Phyllis Wheatley. And they're all centered on their girlhood. It ain't how we tell it, P-Dub. You were not born half grown in the belly of a ship bearing the same name. The hue of your skin is the same shades of cedar and mahogany. Planks are not evidence. The bill of sale is no birth certificate. Your first name is as old as a giggle and lengthy. Nejma, a star. Asia, the clever. Your name stenciled in Sanskrit and Aramaic tongues, written in a book, one that engraves dynasties. Your father called you music. He couldn't keep you from scoring melodies across his palace walls. Your grandmother was throned, chewing on rods of honey, knighted you a scribe, commanded you to be about the business of wonder. Silence. The first alarm. Your auntie went blind when she heard that you had been stolen. Sand blistered in her skin. It's the salt gash above her eye. In this Western wilderness, Greek words are grit in Anglican tongues. In English, Latin reads like a wart in your eye. Gaelic phrases sound like bones breaking. Language is a sword that quivers, cursing a cleric's lips. Grace can only be found in the slant of ink and the quill of your side eye. I wrote that about Phyllis Wheatley because if she was taken at about 6 or 7 from her homeland in Africa, there are some possibilities. One, that she could have been Islamic, and she also could have been highborn. If she was Islamic and highborn, it would have been a command of the religion that she would know how to read the Quran. So imagine a 6 or 7-year-old literate little girl who may also have access to the other languages of that hemisphere, like Greek or Latin, hearing people in English attempting to speak those languages, right? And recognizing the words, how perverse that may have been in her ear. The next poem that I want to read is entitled Beloved Weirdo. And this is dedicated to Miss Harriet Jacobs. Beloved Weirdo, you are not digging this book about a slave girl and her incidents. The pages read about her early knowing of all things. Meanwhile, you ain't got a stitch of sense. If you did, you would have put that book down and hit that boy, asking you if your name is beloved and if you're going to be like Setha and kill the newborn baby he wants to put in you. Is he the weirdo watching in on you and your bestie leaving the woman's clinic? You wish you would have gone wild as the wind on him for prying. Instead, you go deaf and dumb thinking on it. Your mind wanders into a book. You think on asking, Miss Harriet Jacobs, how does a girl learn to be a slave? Does a snake bite you and leak venom until you fall crippled and spasm, zombie you into a slave? If no, then you gotta swallow a butterfly and let it flutter up in your throat. Smother your words until you become a slave. Do you let the butterfly kick you way up into your tonsils? This will make your eyes rummage the floor for cracks and force you to be humble. Can a slave be made from a butterfly that avoids the windows, avoids light? Does that butterfly become a bat under a girl's collar? Or do you crawl under the hoof of a horse named Andrew Jackson to become a slave. The horse galloping and neighing at your earlobes, dirt in with the blood. To be a slave, would you have to take your ribs and fashion Andrew Jackson's hooves with ivory shoes? Would the overseer use your teeth to tether, hold Andrew Jackson's shoes in like nails? In the cradle of your black ringing neck, do you offer the nag a pedestal and curtsy at the mare's master? Just curious, not dying to know. Another poem I want to read from this section is Never Grow Old, and it's one of the many tributes I have to Aretha Franklin in the book. Aretha Franklin and Whitney Houston are all over the book. I love them. Okay, Never Grow Old for Aretha Franklin. You said never grow old and swore you wouldn't. This disco is church happy, stirring joy between your knees. Your worries disappear into the bop. They rock steady, far from your responsibilities. Huck Flynn ain't the only one to know fun. Ben Franklin nibbled at what he knew about how to grow better. Meanwhile, your voice is caramel lush, wet and warm, star-kissed sugar around everyone's soul. Their hearts bare, naked as a baby, bathing on the dance floor. A piano churns, you coo, your eyes floating behind smoke liners. It never grows old. Okay, does anybody have any questions at this point around now? Any comments, any requests? No? Am I the only one that likes Aretha Franklin?
No, you're
No.
not. I love her.
Damaris, I know in reading your biography, you have done a lot of work in studying of Toni Morrison.
Absolutely.
So do you have a poem or a passage in the book speaking of your admiration for Miss Morrison that you could read?
Yeah, you want to hear that long poem. I'm
I
gonna,
know.
all right, I'll read the long poem next. It means I only get to read one poem out of that section. That's your slick way of asking. But Beloved Weirdo does also brings up stuff.
Right, right,
but I revere Toni Morrison.
right.
Um,
This past fall, actually, we did a whole like citywide read on Toni Morrison's Beloved. So
yeah,
still stays with us.
I love Beloved. So Cynthia King can attest. I was not a very straightforward little girl. So I've always been a surrealist. And before I found Toni Morrison's work, I read Octavia Butler and I read some Gail Jones, but I also read copious amounts of Latino literature. Copious amounts, because I could always get the surrealism there very accessibly, like in a regular mainstream Barnes and Noble store before I became like a literary scholar. So yeah, so of course Toni Morrison was a kind of gift for me, because I can't tell, only thing I can do straight is date. Everything else in my life is queer, twisted, wound up and viney. Nothing is really sequential. I do just about everything out of order. And with that said, I'll read to you kind of this jigsaw poem that Miss Joseph requested in a very
Yes.
polite and subtle way.
Thank you.
You're welcome. This poem is called Born Again and Again. The title of the book actually comes from this poem. A bound woman is a dangerous thing, opened with a dedication to my paternal grandmother, and this is a dedication to my maternal grandmother. Born again and again. Premonition. My father's life will be a jigsaw puzzle, double-eared and irregular pieces, a portrait of a man your father will never admit he knows. Your father will push away from the table. The perfume of Jezebels will howl in his robe. Your father will abandon his vows. Your father's congregation will hiss, coil around him, and sting him in two dialects. Opening scene. I am 3 the first time I die. Your flesh is a cleft between the dashboard and a car floor. Glass and concrete are pebbling in your freckles. Your grandmother will leave paradise, spill oceans, and frack mountains to get to you. The doctors will see her levitating in hospital lighting. You will wave to her from the darkness. How the body functions. Resurrection is not painless. The eyes will land first, doing the work of the heart, because the eyes have more muscle. Your tongue is languid, the last to make it back and most divine. She is the strongest muscle you know, because you have a twin grandmother tongue, one like the one you witnessed overthrow antiquity. Scenes at the grave. Speaking of Africans who can fly, ask Hester Prynne about the lick of tar at her wrist. Ask Tituba of Salem, what can she spell? Ask Baby Suggs to preach the sermon about how beloved found her way into this world. Your woman tongue can hoist bodies into heaven when it dances from the margin of the brook, taking her old place. Foreshadowing. For years, my father will have faith in the armor of manhood and fornicate with the idea of being human. Your father will abandon his family a little every day and for longer spells in the evening. Your father will swear he is working. It is darkest when your daddy ain't home. It will be midnight when you realize that your father is unholy. Arc of Miracles. My grandmother begged for my life, not miracles. Your grandmother is an itinerant God when she raises you from the dead. So what if your hips arrive before your knees? Spend the life she gave you tucking your left hip bone into the socket of your liver. Your kidneys will be hourglass stacked and your lungs will be cupped into your forearm. Imagery. The roof of my mouth is a tabernacle of polished jewels. Your tongue has an affinity for strays. She calls for the long dead, sees them fading in and out of living room chairs. Or they are the ghosts that live in your human nature poster, or the haints that mime your name from the reflection in the mirror. Being born again ain't easy. Opening dialogue. At 3, your daughter is dead. The words puzzle your father. An EKG machine eulogizes you in Morse code. Your ventilator plays a funeral march of AFib rhythms. The second time you are born, you have no navel, no fur, no veil. You break your mother's tombs of expectations. You don't walk through walls. You furk from behind the door, eyes doing the work of the heart, tongue, symbolism, lingering. Resurrection is not merciless, excruciating, like any other mystery. Resurrection is merciless, excruciating, like any other mystery. You wake to testify, cry in the bosom of a woman who has waited for her girlhood self in the looking glass. You witness how she force-fed, choked down love, following the drums of her grandmother's prayers, licking sweat out of the palms of demons, combating the weapon most men fear, the womb. First birth is war. Flashback. The second birth is worship. Your first spirit, your grandmother, hovers over you, speaking holy tongues into death's canals, where you are the beloved orphan of the ungodly. The doctors tell her, breath is better spent on the living. You hear your grandmother's prayers in your nostrils because your ears are doing the work of the eyes. Your eardrums are stained in light. Static characters. Caged birds sing. Like Maya Angelou and so many women before you, you once sat in the children's section of the Colored Methodist Episcopal Church. It is the same procedure when you are tied to the hospital bed with bars. There are no lavender taffeta hospital gowns. They are tattered morgue sheets, seamed into the wounds with bloody dressings. They smell like compost under your nails. Point of view. Are there instructions about how to make a father? You go to the first book you know, your family Bible. You thumb through Exodus. Ask the Jews about young fathers. Your God has a chosen people and no sons. Did your father waste 40 years, 2 generations in the wilderness? Moses has grandchildren and dies before Israel, more humble than any other man. Setting that illuminates the character. Black girls have a disposition for shape-shifting. Did you know that the matter molding technology of your grandmother's prayers is genetic? Your doctor is old and untowing, cursing you with his jabber jaws, daft to the power of the tongue, the muscle that dances back and between the sides of the living. Your twin tongue will soon be cackling about your future from the stories of what he deemed dead. Allegory. My breath is burdened by listening beyond prayer. The doctor tells your father, if you are alive, that you will never walk again. Tells him that for you, talking will be impossible. This doctor is a ring master of lies. He is not skilled in the acrobatics, ignorant to the buoyancy of your Black girl legacy, the arts of adaptation, the arithmetic that rolls in your neck. Connotation. Shug Avery is the finest pastor I know. She dances like she's marching. Her voice is a shiny trumpet on the 7th day of Jericho. She preaches every Sunday like it's Jubilee, a sermon sweet with forgiveness in every song. She belches in beatitudes. Helped are those that love the broken and the whole. None of their children, nor any of their ancestors, nor any of themselves shall be despised. Deleted chapter. Zora's Janie nearly died from grief when she left her grandmother's home. And you didn't come back until you had buried the sudden dead. The sun sets. You will tell your best friend about it without grief. You are young and will go too quick for worries. You will leave sudden and bloated, eyes flung wide open in judgment. The sun is gone, but you look to the footprints in the sky. Falling action. My father missed the day seminary taught about Mount Sinai. In the Old Testament, God is not always present. Your father embraces the covenant, the gift of the Torah. Your father's 10 commandments are made from the marrow of the living. Your father says the laws of men are not the ways of God. Being born again is a religion of being forgiven. Cast away are the debts of sin. Metaphor. My grandmother is a Holy Spirit. She comes to you like a mighty rushing wind. She appears before you, arms spread wide and running, waiting to embrace you. You can see the starlight in her mouth. You count each of Ezekiel's 4 wheels. You recall this world in the afterlife. You tumble toward her, a blazing chariot, carrying a ring shout for power from above. Allusion to the theme. I am the prophet of Glace Solia, the twice-born girl, the love child of Lazarus, with skin like brick and tar. I remember when I met the Lord, spray painted her face upon the Tower of Babel, tagged our sacred names. God and I are gossiping when she reminds the Holy Spirit that one people speaking in one tongue makes nothing impossible. I'm eavesdropping, my ears collect Iliad stones and angel fire. Resolution. Anything you love will not leave you forever. I'm going to say that again. Anything you love will not leave you forever. Beloved makes a trip across the darkness, across the rivers, to the shores of the living and the loved. She knows the way. She's sick of waiting in purgatory, where she sits listening to Setha tell the story about Denver's birth, too much to forget. Beloved is gilded by the pink tongue of her grandmother, baby Suggs, the one who kneels down next to beloved, the granddaughter, dead baby with her throat cut, and prays. So now, Miss Joseph, I'm gonna put you in the hot seat. Why did you want to hear that poem? This is only the second time I've read that poem because it's so long, it takes so much time.
Right. No, I think that to me, given all the controversy around the book, I wanted to kind of keep that alive and keep that in like the forefront of people's minds. So when I know that you have a particular admiration for Miss Morrison as well. So
absolutely, absolutely. That is probably one of my favorite poems in the book, if not my favorite poem in the book.
Yeah, I mean, it's a life-changing book. I mean, it's really a mind-altering book. And you talk about surrealism for me as well. So, because when you talk about surrealism, I mean, there's so many of those themes in Beloved, right? That that really kind of surface. And yeah, so thank you.
That's the kind of relationship that we always want with our, well, that's the kind of relationship that we want with our reader, but that's also something, you know, I'm not that good of a church girl, but I'm real good at like listening to God. I'm really not that well behaved, but I do pray that every space that I enter will be ignited with change for good. So for you to say that to me, Miss Joseph, that it was a transformative book for you, like that, really, I'm grateful for that personally and spiritually, right? It affirms that for me.
Yeah, so I don't know if you know, I think a couple of years ago, maybe it was 2 years ago, we had Dr. Monique Morris. Do you know Dr. Monique?
Yeah, from Push Out. One of the books I talk
right.
about, yeah.
So really, when I think your book came out, kind of really reminded me of like the things that she told our community and to kind of hold space and for young Black girls and how it's like so important to be kind and caring towards them because the world just isn't as much as, you know, it should be. So yeah, so this,
well, I'll take it a space further because not only hold space and be kind and caring, but what I really hope that readers leave with from this book, that even the ways that we attempt to protect Black girls are heavily rooted in fear, right? But the actions of protection that we are surrounding Black girls with also become vehicles for punishment, because in all of that very structured protection, the people that would victimize Black girls still have power and are undeterred.
Right, yes, right.
Right. And so even in our loving actions, we may be punishing Black girls. And that's something I kind of wanted to, for us to think about collectively. Like, I think all human beings are entitled to desire, beauty, and imagination. But if we create a space that we think is secure, right, by locking someone in a closet, then that closet just becomes another type of prison.
Sure, yes, of course, yeah. And
it may not protect them, because people that have power have keys to closets, right? And so, like, it's a very complex issue, right? But I want us to kind of like acknowledge that the predicament of race, gender, and age kind of creates a special ecosystem and environment for Black girls to develop in. And I think as a society, we need to think broader about safety and creating stimulating and nurturing environments.
Right.
Rather than really secure prisons.
Right.
Right? Or other types of prisons. Does anybody else have a question or something they want to say? Even if you have something you want to say. Amen to that. Carolyn said, I don't know who cares. Oh, okay. Carolyn's in the Carolyn Keegan. It's a lot of Carolyn's Alliance. Hi. Okay, I want to read another poem. This is my second or my other favorite poem in the book. Get ready. Some people are uncomfortable with this poem. I love this poem. I think Miss Joseph knows what it is because she's kind of smiling. Hotter than July. Hi, friend in the back, girl in the back. I'm so happy you're here for this one. Hotter than July. You sit on 2 clouds of bees. Honey storms in the place of your hips. Your waist is an unripe watermelon, a tense and tight drum. You carry daisies for breasts with dandelion eyes. Summer is skipping away. Every radio humming static. Electric is July, hotter than we remember, which is why you pray for her return. Carrying sweet onions in the hot grease of your armpits, salt and soda crackers in the creases of your neck. July is the 7-Eleven of your childhood, fluorescent. Your jelly sandals are neon, your panties are washboard and starch white, snapping hand game rhythms with your belly button. The driveway is your playground, littered with Christy dolls and cordless curlers. In the attic, you play with your vanity. You pretend it is a crib. You skip circles around a stool, sit on top of it, blue magic hair glue on the back of your wrist. You pick at a face mirror, you blow on it to reveal the musings of your mustache. You karate kick an ankle into the air, flash freeze, there. You tiptoe balance between toenail polish and your need for October. Middle school is a distant dinner guest. It is July and you are still a girl. You wrestle back the pink folds of your body, cuss God for holding the woman in you for ransom. You beg for the blood. You want it rushing, shiny, thick and lush like your hair, enough to uppercut yourself in the tongue, blood enough to inspire envy. You want it lava hot and licorice sweet. You want the boys to tell you that you smell like rusting quarters. Rumor has it that a girl's first blood is chocolate. You want it enough to chew Big Red while chomping on Cocoa Puffs and Pop Rocks. You want blood enough to make friends with the witches among ordinary women. You run relays to the store for these hussies. They drink ice cold Pepsi without staining their laundry, always hanging their rusty drawers between the sheets. So that's my ode to the period poem, my ode to menstruation poem. It's a really hard thing for people to do. It's my favorite. Feel like I crushed that. Most people are all sentimental. I got to make it funny. So that's all, you know. Okay. So this book also has lots of images in it taken by friends or archival pictures of Black girls. One of my friends took this of Black girls in her neighborhood. This is actually Gordon Parks' photo there. One of my favorite photos in the book.
Do you have
is a
any
photo-
Stanford photos, Damaris?
I do not have any Stanford photos in this book. I have them all over Facebook though, but this is one of my favorite photos in the book. And this is a photo of Whitney Houston. And those posters behind her are her mother.
Wow.
When her mother was a recording artist, and her cousin Dionne Warwick.
Wow.
And I think it's the most precious photo of Whitney ever, because she's like 17 and laying on the bed talking on the phone, probably dreaming of singing.
Mm-hmm.
And she has these singers posted up behind her. So that photo was really important to me. So I'm going to read some poems from the end of the book. We don't have that much time, so I'll read a few of them. The poems at the end of the book, a lot of them deal with, unfortunately, Black girls that have been murdered or expired. And then others deal with historical tragedies, such as the bombing of the 16th Street Church. And then towards the end, I intended to write one poem about the girls of Borno and Bring Back Our Girls movement, but I ended up writing quite a few about those young women. So I'm gonna end this reading with reading maybe 2 or 3 poems from that section, and then we can talk a little bit more. So for all of Birmingham's baby girls, and this poem is dedicated to Condoleezza Rice. Few people know that Condoleezza Rice and Angela Davis grew up in Birmingham together. Isn't that ironic? So for all of Birmingham's baby girls, our friend is named Angela Davis, and you are skipping rope. Together you roll call poets and philosophy, cookie recipes in the rhythm of double Dutch ropes and heartbeats. You keep lists, the pens that hold nuclear power, pencil leads that are fashioned from Amazonian ores, the stuff Wonder Woman wears at her wrist. You will age bulletproof. Ask Oprah. You will not have golden lassos the day Birmingham is blinded by America's truth. No, terrorist. Americans put 15 sticks of dynamite into church steps, making 4 saintly girls seraphs. The organ sweats grief. The organ moans. The organ knows the gospel of tiny geniuses. The organ remembers when you tickled her ivory spine with a sinner's song. Tutti frutti, loose booty. The organ felt the spark you had for little Richard in your fingertips. The organ is a prophet. You are practicing for American Bandstand. Your mama taught you to play piano with sweetness. She keeps plenty of company come Sunday afternoons. She tastes soot in her cake batter and knows that no one plans to show. Your mama howls something like Setha over dead daughters, and you snuggle into the bench, pinch the keys as pretty as Florentine Price to make your mama stop sobbing over the seared ribbon in the yard and bombs in the bottom of churches. Okay, bring back our Black girls. This is not a story. This is not a story, but old as creation, dark as the Middle Ages, dark as the dawn of the European Renaissance, dark as the discovery of new worlds, dark as gold covering espresso stains of first menses, dark as the most beautiful Sudanese princess, dark as the oil out of the Middle East, dark as the diamond mines outside of Cape Town, dark as us. The bark of ancient trees on the sea islands of South Carolina, dark as those who still call themselves marooned on the Canary Islands, dark as the Cimarrons in the mountains of Colombia, as those who hid in the Great Dismal Swamp, dark as Haitian mambo mothers spitting tobaccos in the faces of genteel men tearing at their skirts, dark as the heart of war in the name of wealth, dark as the coldest day in winter, dark as the shadows of northern lights, dark as a cobra's skin and the venom pulsing, dark as the nostril of a caged bird through the eyes of a snake, dark as the heart of a man who would tell a nation to shoot Lysol into their veins like dope. Dark as greedy men who tell you that grandparents want to die for you because they want you to be a consumer zombie gliding through the dark of Walmart. Dark and hard as the pavement where Jill Nelson wrote, "Trump equals plague," in chalk to save our dusking lives. Dark as self-induced ignorance, dark as our decency fermenting and rotting in instant grits, dark as the inside of our bellies as we sit here wondering and well removed from the violence of 200 girls being ripped from their chairs, being ripped from their chairs, torn out of a physics exam, and tossed into trucks, stained in blood and the grit of gunpowder, dark and heavy as otherness, dark as the doors of a bank vault underground, dark and heavy as the stillness of this page, and who among us would have the courage to run? Dark as the birthing closets, Wianafu keep life secrets that splint the economies of empires. Rape has always been a war strategy, has always been a broken soldier's reward. Dark as the ore mined to make the nickel you will use to buy this book. Dark as the ink of the contract used to bind this book. Dark as my rage about these children, my heavenly host of girl children, stolen and sold to swell the pockets of greedy men with hearts black enough to be poisoned with nostalgia they want for the days when human flesh was fancy currency. And the last piece I'll read here is Bring Back Our Girls, Premonition 3. Before the rocket's red glare over the oceans and Pearl Harbor, generations of Korean girls were tossed from chairs and desks and taken from schools and thrown into brothels. There, one soldier, sometimes 5, sometimes 60, used your body to dress the wounds not decorated with his blood. A Korean girl, you will not stop running. Doctors half your age will diagnose you with sleepwalking, tell you it is dangerous for your mind to list the names when your heart wishes them the worst deaths. You shut your eyes. Daughters rock themselves when they hear grandmothers snoring, see grandmothers kicking at the air, swinging canes into houseplants before they go tender into their quilts. There is always one left to recount the tales, else a war and its ways may have never really happened. The tree dropping in a forest far away, let's say Nigeria, let's say Borno, without anyone around to hear, is a kind of mystery. Any questions? That's all really, really sad, right? I watch a lot of stand-up comedy when I'm not writing. It's necessary.
It is, it has to be. Cynthia,
Yeah.
you put a comment here in chat. Do you want to ask Damaris?
Yeah, I was wondering why you kind of ended the book with tragic events and not, I don't know, on a lighter note.
Sure. I wanted to amplify the loss of Black girlhood, right? It's not just a loss of life, but I wanted to show the myriad and rainbow of joyful experiences that Black girls have in their own communities and using their own language, and to amplify that not only is this a loss of an individual life, but it's a cultural deficit. Like we're erasing entire cultures. Like Black girlhood culture is a space that I consider and others consider very ingenious space, because if you're being told that something is not for you because you're not white, and you're being told that other things that might be accessible to others are not available to you because you are not a boy, and you're being told that other pleasures are not accessible to you because you're not an adult, in that very insular culture of Black girlhood, you start to manufacture spaces of joy that are not easily replicated in other spaces. And it really has to come from a very internal place. And it has to also be inherited and passed down. So like all the childhood hand games and childhood songs and nostalgia, like that is not even passed from generation to generation. It's almost passed in like half generations or quarter generations. And it's a cultural, it's a particular cultural treasure that is preserved and nurtured by children. So this is all this self-manufactured joy. I wanted to talk about also the collective loss of that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so it does make, I know it makes people really, really sad.
Yeah.
When I was writing this book, I didn't realize, but one of my friends talked about it. She was like, I would call you and ask you how it's going, and you would say, this book is going to kill me. But I wrote these sad poems first. I wrote the back of the book first.
Oh, okay. Okay.
It's like writing the individual poems is like one art, and then how they're going to be read is another. So I also want to talk about the cover of the book. The cover of the book sparkles. I don't know if you guys know that, but it sparkles. It catches light. I wanted that really, really bad. And I also wanted all of these little gray spots, but it didn't happen. I'll talk to you about it. The gray spots to actually be foil paper. And the first page of the book was supposed to be a mirror, like a foil page, so that the reader could see themselves. And that was on purpose because there's already a lot of hypervisibility to Black girls. And I wanted people to recognize their own humanity in the experiences of reading the book. But what happened when they were producing the book is that the foil paper, of course, any of us that really paid attention in school, was conducting heat much faster than the other pages. And so it was searing and singeing before they could get the cover to stick on. And so somewhere in a factory, in a publishing factory, there's like tons of foil paper. But it'll never make it into the book. But that was also important to me. So like the whole process, and my friends complain that I'm too conceptual. And when I think about a book, I don't just think about the pages. I think about everything. Like I wanted a book that was going to be fun for little girls to hold. I wanted them to be able to see themselves in it. I wanted them to know that I was like thinking of them when I wrote it, even if it's being sold as an adult book. So yeah, all of those things are important.
So you beat me to my question because I was going to ask you about the cover of your book, because it is very unique.
Yeah, I negotiated that in the contract. Like,
Oh,
okay,
did you?
I said it has to have it. And when we didn't have it, I was devastated. And then my editor is the editor in chief for Bloomsbury for the US, right? This
Right.
international company. She was like, I was on the phone with the president and he was like yelling at the printer because we have all of this paper sitting there. We picked out the paper like a year before the book went into print. That's how much I was like stressing them out about having a mirror in the book. Because if you're talking about hyper visibility and voyeurism on Black girls, you can't create a book where voyeurs can have a paradise experience in it of looking at Black girlhood. So you have to mediate that, you know? And so like a good example is like that poem, like a lot of these pictures in here are like full body pictures. But the poem Hotter Than July, you only get this little girl laughing at you with her shirt buttoned all the way up to her neck. So even though she's talking excessively about her body, none of her body is available for the reader. Any other questions? I'm not gonna look at the chat. I see some questions in the chat. Or some comments in the chat, but I don't know what they say.
I think we answered the question that was in chat.
Okay. So I'm going to try to leave you guys on a happy note. I'm going to read the acknowledgements because this was also very heartfelt and very thought through. And I mean it. So acknowledgements. This book would not exist without a community of Black girls, some infant, some grown, some granny, some levitating between. I recognize the God in you. Thank you to my sisters, blood related and designated, for being the air that I breathe. I recognize the God in you. Dear friends, thank you for holding my hand as I walk this journey and the next. I recognize the God in you. I'm also grateful for the ancestors, the generations, and the future Black girls, those who are not yet born, but already loved. I recognize the God in you. I belong to you. You belong to me. Thank you to the Wintergreen Women. This is a collective of writers, some of whom you know and love, and they're great cards players and cursors. But thank you to the Wintergreen Women, the minis, my mentees, the megas, my mentors, the church ladies, the educational aunties, the sister writers, scholars, artists, archivists, and the midwives of the revolution, evolution. I want to acknowledge and thank all the Jersey girls and divas who can write, sing, act, dance, create, and wrestle your hearts from the concrete on command. Your presence is everywhere. Your names are far too many to list. I recognize the God in you. I belong to you. You belong to me. To all the Black girl guardians and the fellows on the front lines for Black girl liberation, my father, my brothers, uncles, cousins, family, my friends, those play brothers, those brother writers, scholars, artists, activists, the young and the old lovers, and those who love tender as rainbows and cackle with me in bright colors. I also want to thank my son for choosing this Black girl to be his mother and loving me in my wholeness and complexity. I recognize the God in you. I belong to you. You belong to me. I have a special thanks to the institutions that are doing work to nurture and narrate the lives of Black girls, specifically Saving Our Lives, Hearing Our Truths Collective, the Urban Bush Women, the Giggles, Guts, and Glitter Clique, the Colored Girls Museums, founded by the visionary genius of Vashti Dubois. Thank you to Charlotte Sheedy and everyone at the Sheedy Literary Agency for always supporting my vision. Thank you, Nancy Miller, and everyone at Bloomsbury Publishing and Macmillan Publishers for bringing this vision to print. I recognize God in the work you do, and I acknowledge the blessing that you are. I belong to you, you belong to me. I'm grateful for the support of the Furious Flower Poetry Center at James Madison University, McDowell, the Watering Hole Poetry Org, the Kentucky Foundation for Women, the Vermont Studio Center, Bread Loaf Writers, Conference on Poetry, the Commonwealth Institute for Black Studies, the Arts and Sciences Dean's Office and the Office of the Provost for Research at the University of Kentucky, the Project for the History of Black Writing at the University of Kansas, the Center for Black Literature at Medgar Evers College, the Institute for African American Affairs and the Center for Black Visual Culture at Newark University, the Gordon Parks Foundation, the New York Public Library, all libraries, the Poets and Scholars of the Summer of Writing Workshop for the Institute for the Study of Global Racial Justice at Rutgers University, and others. I recognize the God in the work you do and acknowledge the blessing that you are. I belong to you, you belong to me. I also want to thank God in all her many forms, the past lives and the yet to be. Without you, this book would not be possible. I belong to you, you belong to me. So even in the sadness, this book is a real labor of love for me.
Thank you so much, Damaris.
You're welcome.
What a wonderful note to end on. It's 8 o'clock and I'm getting kicked out of work. So I think that's my cue to leave. And thank you all for joining me. And,
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you all.
Bye. Thanks.
Bye.
Good night.